When it was released back in 2013, Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds helped to usher in a new generation of stylish beat-em-up that honored the classics from the 16-bit era while simultaneously adding something new and exciting to the formula. What you may not have realized at the time was that Battlegrounds was actually a spin-off of a one-on-one fighting game released on the Xbox 360 that never made its way outside of Japan. Now, more than a decade after it first came to consoles, Phantom Breaker has finally come west with a comprehensive new iteration named Omnia. It's a game that not only packages all of the characters, stories, and endings from the past versions, but also adds extra combatants, a new fighting style, and English voice acting. That's cool for collectors, but does this aging fighting game still hold up in 2022? That's what I wanted to find out in this review of Phantom Breaker Omnia. If you've never played Phantom Breaker before, then here's what you need to know. It's all about a mysterious figure named Phantom that lures a bunch of anime characters to compete in a grueling tournament by promising to grant the winner's wish. These fights take place all over Tokyo, with each duelist forced to use weapons known as Fumention artifacts, or FAs for short. But as the colorful cast of characters dig deeper, they begin to sense that something's up with the Phantom, and maybe things are not what they appear. This sets up a fun fighting game with more than 20 combatants, all of which are armed with powerful weapons and desperately want to have their wish be granted. What kind of weapons, you ask? Well, let me introduce you to Ende, who uses a giant floating metal hand to pummel the competition. There's also Kokoa, who fights using her demonic hand. Itsuki is an arbiter of justice that lays down the law with a battle hammer. Em, a girl with no name or past who uses a mace created by scrap metal. And Finn, who uses a futuristic, multi-purpose laser gun named JJ Apple. Obviously. Look, if you can't tell from the description, everybody is a larger-than-life character in Phantom Breaker Omnia. They are eccentric anime personalities with unique stories, wishes, and weapons. It's the kind of thing that could have been overwhelming for a new player, yet this particular one-on-one fighter has a secret weapon. Every single person in this game is fun to control. The reason is simple. By design, Phantom Breaker is an incredibly accessible game that's easy to get into. We're given a weak, medium, and hard attack, as well as a special move button that'll unleash missiles, fireballs, and fierce uppercuts. Your moves will change depending on the direction and buttons that you're pressing at the time, which means that you won't need to learn a lot of overly complicated button combinations or directional inputs. All you really need to remember is the difference between holding left, right, and down and pressing the special move button. While I'm sure hardcore fans may scoff at the simplicity of the gameplay, what it does is immediately gets the player into the action. I never felt like I had to spend 2 or 3 rounds hunting for special moves and combos because the basics remained the same no matter which character you choose. And that's a good thing, because right out of the gate, Phantom Breaker Omnia is a fast-paced fighting game that doesn't give you a whole lot of time to think. The relatively simplistic gameplay fits perfectly in a speedy game like this. And because the 22 characters are so wildly different, I never ran into the problem where the easy controls made everything feel too similar or repetitive. The fights are action-packed, with combos and projectiles flying all over the place. There's also a burst meter that you can power up that'll increase your speed, power, and moves. What's more, you can customize your character with 3 different fighting styles. There's Quick, which specializes in combos, Hard, which is all about single-hit attacks, and the new Omnia style, which enhances the character's specs at the expense of complex mechanics. Now, beyond having more than 20 beautifully animated fighters, this package also features a lot of the content found in the previous Phantom Breaker games. This includes all of the stories from the original game, as well as those from the updated extra version from 2013. With so many different characters, it's gonna take you a while to go through this entire story. One of the things that I like is that some of the characters have individual challenges baked into their stories. something that requires you to play in specific ways just to pass a test. This means landing a multi-hit combo, parrying a number of times, breaking a special move, and so on and so forth. Other characters have a more traditional story mode where you watch lengthy cinemas that flesh out the world and the people drawn to the tournament. The writing isn't always great, and some of the dialogue overstays its welcome, but I appreciate the effort and the added touch of including English voice acting. Phantom Breaker Omnia also comes with most of the other modes that you would expect from a modern fighting game, including a score attack, endless battle, arcade mode, time attack, and a number of versus mode options. The good news is the game also features online multiplayer with both ranked and player matches. Unfortunately, the bad news is that Phantom Breaker is not using rollback netcode, which is something that may impact your performance. Thankfully, I didn't run into too many difficulties while playing online, but your mileage may vary. Another disappointment is the training mode. Actually, it's not the mode that's the problem, but rather the way the game introduces you to its unique gameplay mechanics. You would think that you'd be able to learn the basics, combos, and special moves right there in the training mode, but you can't. All of that is tucked away in the instruction manual, which the game is nice enough to include in a completely separate part of the menu. Look, this is not one of those games where you can just pause the game and look at the character moves. Something that's pretty much standard in the genre these days. Honestly, it would have been helpful to merge all that information into one mode that actually taught you how to play the game. Look, despite being more than a decade old, Phantom Breaker still looks great. Sure, it's not as flashy as last year's Guilty Gear Strive, but it also doesn't feel 11 years old. I love the look of the anime characters, both in detail and how they're animated. The 2D graphics don't have any rough edges and fit perfectly with the 3D elements found in the backgrounds. Speaking of which, I love the use of Tokyo as a setting. We end up fighting in a lot of everyday spots, like a train station, or outside of a computer store, inside of a school, next to a bunch of government buildings, the hospital, and a whole bunch more landmarks. I also really dig the catchy tunes, and especially appreciate how you can listen to both the original and the remixed soundtrack. Between the accessible gameplay, the large cast of characters, and the lengthy story mode, there's a lot to like about Phantom Breaker Omnia. I'm not sure that's going to be enough for the hardcore fight fans to abandon Guilty Gear and the rest of the big hitters, but I had a lot of fun with the speedy combat and unique gameplay. This is the kind of fighting game I can whip out that'll satisfy both the genre veterans and the newcomers. That's rare for this type of game, and it's just one of the reasons why I have no problem recommending Phantom Breaker Omnia. Coming to the West for the first time after more than a decade, Phantom Breaker Omnia proves to be worth the wait. With gorgeous graphics and wonderfully detailed character designs, this one-on-one fighting game hasn't missed a beat in the last 10 years. The simple yet effective gameplay makes the game more accessible for casual fight fans, all while giving the hardcore enough depth to keep them coming back for more. Best of all, the lengthy story mode has been completely translated and features a choice between Japanese and English voice acting. Unfortunately, the game has a bad habit of hiding a lot of useful information, and the online netcode can be a little iffy. The gamers who've been waiting all this time for Phantom Breaker to finally come to the West won't be disappointed by Omnia. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite 2D fighting game? It can be new or old, but just make sure it's not one of those 3D fighters. I'm only talking about 2D, people. Alright, let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back shortly with reviews of both Wing Breakers and Grand Mountain Adventure. Also, we'll be taking a look at a couple of Q classics. You'll see what that means soon enough. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.